Welcome back. It's loaded and rolling live, and I'm Thomas Wasson. I have been around, folks. I have been to Manifest in Las Vegas. I have been to other places, and I will go to places soon. But one of the technology aspects, one of the topics is technology. And one of the things that, especially my other community, truck tech, it's been all autonomous trucking and EVs and all the cool green stuff. But here in the truckload space, we like to put our AI to work doing more fun things, like optimizing your workflow, answering phones, and doing things I wish that intern I kept telling he should have done right, doing it right the first time. And so I'm excited to be bringing on the folks from Circle Logistics. They had recently announced a partnership and have been working with the folks at Happy Robot. They're using some AI and technology to make things a little bit easier for them, and it's super, super cool stuff. And so we're going to be welcoming on our guest, Andrew Smith. He's Senior Vice President at Circle Logistics. And Andrew, y'all have been cooking some things up lately.
Yeah, we have, and it's been a lot of fun.
And so let's dive into to how the backstory, and because I know I've heard of Happy Robot before. There's some really cool stuff, and I've been lucky to talk with Circle a few times. What's kind of the lore and the backstory on how this partnership and came about?
I don't usually sit in an office. I usually sit on the floor with my data team, and we trade around a lot of ideas and do a lot of innovation. And I came into work one day about a year ago, and one of my data analysts came up to me and said, "Hey, I was on the Discord channel last night and I heard about these Happy Robot guys. You really need to look into it." And first of all, I was like, "What's Discord?" I'm not a tech nerd. I'm not on there. But anyway, so I immediately linked up with the guys from Happy Robot, and they were just kind of coming out of stealth mode at the time. And I saw kind of a proof of what they were starting to put together. And I was shocked and amazed. It sounded so realistic and it worked so well. And I immediately became addicted. For the next couple of months, I worked with them. Every night I put my kids to bed and I linked up with them late at night, and we listened to calls, went through calls, helped change and teach the LLM behind Happy Robot. And I think by April or May, we were live running about 1,000 calls a day through. And we had a great time. It worked really well. It's been a huge needle mover for us, not just for us, but I think our carriers too. I think there's a natural amount of pushback on any kind of new tech adoption, but really what we found at the end of the day, now that we've done over 400,000 calls with them, is that we can answer every single call immediately, no hold times. And this is an age-old problem in freight brokerage, where if you have 20 reps and you get 20 phone calls, you can't answer all those at one time. And so I think it's been a huge value add for both of our carriers and for us. When it comes to like carrier sales, inbound calls, use case, for example, typically a human will sit there, maybe they'll take some notes on a notepad, make a note on a Post-it. They don't really remember those conversations. You're not extracting any data, right? I don't remember that, John Wayne Trucking called me on a load from Chicago to Toledo 5 times. And that just becomes useless, right? That notepad, that Post-it gets lost, those notes get lost. And so what we found now is we're able to extract data from all these phone calls, and we know who's calling us and from what phone number they're calling us, what MC number that phone number is associated with, how often they're calling us. And in the marketing world, they call this intent data. So maybe a carrier has never hauled from Chicago to Toledo before, but now we know they might have called us 5 times wanting to haul that lane. And so not only are we able to answer all these calls in real time with no hold time, but we're building better profiles on our carriers. And so I know there's a lot of pushback in the AI space. Well, you can't replace relationships. I would make the argument that we're actually increasing our relationships with our carriers because we're learning more about them and their behavior.
And that was one of the things I think that even in operations, fielding inbound calls, and you have to be like, press 1 for this, press 2 for that. So with this AI, we're moving away from the dispatch line hold music, broker line hold music to, hey, this is Circle. What can I do you for? And I can just talk to it. Is that kind of where we're at?
Yeah, and it has complete access to our TMS, and it can look up anything that a human can. It can get an ETA. It could get a pickup number for you. Um, it's interesting you say that because we have a manager's line that I'm on, and it rings several times a day with somebody. Oh, I'm calling about this load. Oh, well, why did you? How did you get this number? Oh, well, I was on hold for 20 minutes. I got transferred around 7 times, right? And that doesn't happen anymore. I look through, I've managed our phone system for a decade now, and, calls bounce around our phone system, or somebody's a little lazy and they transfer them to the right department, but not the right person, or they'll just send a call anywhere because they don't want to deal with it. If the AI has complete access to our phone system, so if you say, hey, I want to talk to Mark, it'll look up Mark's extension and directly send you and connect you with Mark. And so I wouldn't say that like, hey, we've replaced our phone system with AI. It's more or less augmenting what a human does. You can still talk to a human, you still get a human on the phone, but that initial first interaction of, hey, I want a little bit of data from you. Can this load pick up later? Can you pay a little more money? We could get that answer for you immediately. And what was really interesting after our first 90 days on Happy Robot, I went back through our phone system and I found that our outbound calls actually dropped a little bit. And I was very curious about that because I thought that by reducing some of our inbounds, we would make more outbounds. But really, what we found was we weren't spending time returning voicemails. We weren't spending time, hey, let me get that information and get back to you, because the AI, a human might be busy and have 20 tabs open in the middle of something and say, hey, I'll look that up and get back to you when I can. But the AI has access to all that information immediately. And so our carrier is able to get faster, quicker answers from us without the frustration of being on hold or being transferred around multiple times.
And this is fascinating. Does it do sentiment analysis? I heard at one of the conferences you can train the AI that it'll evaluate if you're happy or angry, and if you yell at it enough, it'll find you a human being. Have we reached the point where I can yell at the AI and verbally abuse it to find a human, or is it deft enough to keep me still, still answer my questions in a very friendly manner?
We can do that. And not only, you don't even have to get to the point of getting angry or cursing or yelling. We've even looked at, hey, if the person's asked the same question 2 or 3 times, we know that, and that'll trigger to just get a human involved with the phone call.
Okay, that's cool. Because I know that, like, one of the things, you mentioned on here, reducing the number of calls 80 to 100%, having better margins, you get 10% higher margins. The last thing I'd heard when I did a brokerage stint was you just have to book in advance to get, like, your 50% more margin. But so with this, it's actually taking the guesswork out. What were some of the big surprises on the rate negotiation? I mean, is this a voice that sounds like a person, or is it the uncanny valley where you can tell it's like Robot Bob?
The voice is very, very good. It sounds very realistic. Most people don't know they're speaking to I. We don't try to hide that. If they ask, she'll answer and say, yeah, I am AI. What we found with the rate negotiations is, number one, as a brokerage leader, I've said to my staff, how is it the carriers can always ask for an extra $100, but we can never ask for an extra $10 or $20, right? And so when you program the AI, it does that every time. And a lot of times a human might say, oh, that's good enough, or that's within my range of tolerance of what I could book this for. But the AI is programmed to ask based on where you're negotiating and what those patterns and percentages are. It's trained to negotiate every single time. So that's part of what I attribute the margin increase to. The other thing is, let's say it's Friday at 5 p.m. and you just got a load from New Jersey to Chicago, and you post that and you get 25 phone calls at one time. Traditionally, a broker might answer the first 5 or 6, and they might take the best option from the best carrier out of those first 5 or 6 calls, while the other ones sit on hold or ring and ring and ring. Well, now we're able to answer all 20 of those calls. And so it gives us a bigger pool of carriers to select the best quality carrier for the best rate. And so for both those reasons, that's what I attribute that margin increase to. It's not necessarily that we're paying the carriers less, but it's that we're able to negotiate every single time. It doesn't matter what mood a human is in. And additionally, we're able to weigh out more options than what we were able to do before.
And I wonder how that works also, because that was one of my challenges was the bidding war. So you'd have 5 people giving you options and everyone's haggling. So if you have the capability of pulling those calls, does the AI, like, I'm assuming if it's under the parameter, just book it. So let's say my max buy is 1,000. I really want to sell it for 1,000. Some schmuck gives me like 700, and I can like, let's do that. Or does the AI know that I'm going to take about 5 calls? I'm going to give it a little bit of time, and I got a 7, a 7, an 8, a 9, and a 12. Like, is that one of the things you got to train the AI as well, so it doesn't just take like the first thing, or does it make everyone else wait? Is there a art to the science behind the haggling?
Well, we don't have the AI making the decisions on what carriers go on what loads for what rate. It helps negotiate the rate, but it's very much still augmented by humans. So humans are watching these calls. They know how many calls there are in real time, and they know who these carriers are, and they're able to weigh out that best decision for the best carrier for the best price for that load. And I think it'll always be that way. I think there's a certain element to hey, we know this carrier, they haul a lot, they do a great job for us. That maybe at some point you could figure out how to get that in the algorithm. I don't think that most TMSs are there to do that today. But it's there's very much so still a human behind the controls, but it still made us 6x more efficient in what we're doing.
And you got a TIA Technovator of the Year award for it as well, because you guys through the implementation. Tell me a little about that process and what went behind it.
That was a great award. I went to the TIA Technovations conference in Jacksonville this year, and they gave me that award on stage. It was a real honor. We worked a lot and put a lot of hours into making Happy Robot work. We were one of the first brokers on it earlier this year, and we had us a lot of success. I've probably onboarded 20 to 30 tech partnerships over the course of my career at Circle, and hands down, this brought more ROI and had a bit bigger impact on what we do. And so to get that recognition from the TIA was a really great honor. Very excited to watch this technology work. And I'm looking forward to TIA this spring where I can continue to meet with other brokers. I think I made a LinkedIn post probably 6 months ago about our success with Happy Robot. And since then, I think I've talked to over 50 brokers, have called me, emailed me, LinkedIn me, reached out to me one way or another. And I've taken the time to meet with all of them. And, I don't see this as like our secret sauce, right? I see this as something that the entire industry should adopt. And so I've been very vocal about advocating for voice AI. I think it's something that not only helps us, but helps our carriers. It helps everyone run more efficiently. A lot of carriers have outsourced their dispatch to foreign countries, right? Because they recognize the human cost of being on the phone a lot is very high. And, I think since COVID, in general in the workforce, there is an attitude change towards people's willingness to be on the phone. Or, I think the standard, probably when I started in this industry in 2009, it was 200 calls a day, right? And then it was 150. And I think that number continues to drop because people want to be on the phone less and less. And I think people are right in that decision. I think that there are a lot of tools out there today that can enable us to do more strategic thinking than brute grunt work.
Yeah, that's one thing I think because you mentioned '09. That's almost still during the Coyote grind from '05. I mean, it was literally like brute forcing. And I even remember when I went to Arrive in like 19, they're like, you need, 10 calls an hour, 100 calls plus a day, get to 120. And so with this AI, you don't really have to get to that point because now you have more time to think of it's like thinking smarter, not harder, right?
Yeah, I was sitting on my carrier sales floor a couple of weeks ago in Chicago, and I watched them try to recover a load that needed picked up within a couple hours. And I was sitting there watching 4 or 5 carrier apps bang out as many phone calls. All of them had 2 or 3 lines going, and I sit there and started using some new TMS tools that we were rolling out with Transport Pro, and I started clicking buttons and sending offers to carriers that we thought might have had trucks in the area. And I've been VP of Circle for quite some time. I haven't covered a load in a long time, but as I sat there and did that, but I got a call from a carrier. Hey, you just emailed me? Yeah, I'm empty right now. I can go pick it up. And so I think the tools are out there now for us to start to connect to carriers in different ways beyond phone calls, to offer them loads and connect to their capacity. And I think that hey, you need to make 100 phone calls today, it's not dead yet, but I do think it'll be dying because there's lots of ways we can connect to carriers. And I'm really excited about voice AI technology. I think that in such a disparate industry with 200,000 carriers, several dozen thousand shippers. You can't API everything, and it's very hard to. You generally just do APIs, right, with like your high level, high volume relationships. And I think voice AI can kind of interact as the API of the future, right? Maybe I'm not going to take the time to build an AI out or an API out with a carrier I do 5 loads a month with, but if their voice AI calls my voice AI, we can exchange data back and forth without a human needing to be involved. And so I've seen the joke on social media: what happens when my AI talks to your AI? I'm really excited for that day, and I think it'll bring a lot of synergies to everybody in the industry.
And one of the things I'm assuming is these are agents, as in the AI agents are tasked, or is there like a unified neural Skynet AI that handles it, or do you kind of make an agent specifically for like booking? That was one of the confusing things I heard at Manifest as well. Everyone kept talking about agents, and I was like, it's not the Matrix, I don't know. And then one guy made Westworld for their AI trucks. Is there anything you can divulge with how that works with the models? I'm assuming the more phone calls you get, like the better it gets because it just keeps feeding. Like, is there any cool behind the scenes stuff on how the AI works for folks who aren't as familiar?
So let me relate this to like blockchain, right? Because I've seen the posts out there of, oh, is AI going to be like blockchain? Blockchain is more or less a system, right? And AI is a system too. But in my opinion, what makes AI useful to logistics is when you embed it into workflows. And so when you embed an agent into workflows, you'll use the AI for consuming data, gathering data, making decisions on that data, but it's all triggered by workflows, whether it's in your TMS or whatever supplementary systems you might be using. And so I don't think there's a Skynet of AI that's like has all the data and can do anything and everything. Maybe that'll be there one day, but today, as far as that practical application of what's there with AI, and AI in and of itself is not really a product or an answer. You've got to look at these agent based tools that say, hey, I'm here to do this specific task, and I'm going to go get this data, summarize this data, make this decision, and then I'm going to trigger a workflow, and I'm going to either make a Slack webhook, or I'm going to email somebody, or trigger an API call, and then this other system is going to take over once it's made that decision. And so right now, AI is most useful when you carve out specific use cases for specific purposes, and then you build workflows and wrap it around the AI.
So it's kind of like I would call in on Circle's line and say, "Hey, this pickup number isn't working," or "Hey, they're telling me that I need this rescheduled." Then an agent would say, "I'm the agent who needs to get this rescheduled, and I'm going to communicate with the TMS." That's the first click, and then the second one's like, "I'm the agent that figures out how to make sure the rescheduling works." Then I tell the other agent I got it, and then we let the driver know. So you're kind of like little Legos almost, but specifically what's the word? Not bougie. It's boutique AIs instead of one mono GPT. You're just plug and play.
Exactly. And I think that's good for practical applications for brokers and transportation companies. You have to look at, you can't just deploy AI and say, okay, go do your job and do it all, right? You have to say, hey, what's the problem I want to solve? And what is our potential ROI, right? Like, for example, we've put an AI use case on the inbound calls we do for payment status calls. It pales in comparison to the number of inbound calls we get on carrier sales, right? It's maybe dozens or hundreds a day versus thousands of carrier sales calls. But most accounting people don't like to answer the phone. And it does solve that annoyance of, hey, I've been trying to get this payment status update, and now I've gone through your phone tree and I pressed 1 and 5 and 7. So I think, if anyone's going to adopt voice AI or AI in general, you have to say, okay, where am I resource heavy and intensive? And let me build a use case out of that. And then what partners are going to be best for me to solve this problem?
That makes so much more sense because it reminds me of the big outsourcing of customer service CS functions, the call centers. So a lot of this AI is a great way to help remove that. I'm thinking of trucking as well. Don't you all have some trucks? I wish my wife works safety and drivers call back to back to back. I'm assuming brokerage is the same way. So that fixes the problem of the repeat offender too, because they're going to keep trying to call if they can't get in. So this is kind of the solution to that critical path of if you miss the call, you may actually cause 5 follow-on calls.
Yeah, the AI might not do critical thinking or hold that same conversation that somebody in safety can, but when it comes, and that's why I keep talking about APIs, right? Simple data transfer. When you're calling for, hey, what's this check number? When's this pickup date? Can I pick this up later? Those simple questions can be answered by voice AI connecting to your API. Now, if it's a complicated question or someone's broke down, there's been an accident, right? That needs to get escalated to a human. But I think in general, there's lots of applications that could apply for trucking companies as well. Anytime you're doing simple phone calls for data exchange, it's a perfect candidate for voice AI.
And I wonder if it can extend to text messaging eventually as well. I think that you gave a great example of recovering a load. You had a list, and I wonder. I guess that's the API part. Is you make an API for the AI and say, "I'm going to let you send out messages," and you can then pull it. So it's really like part of your job is connecting the dots and asking, "What should I let it have? What's it suited for?" Give it an API, and then give it a little workflow. And so I can have like an AI just send out text and saying, "Hey, do you still have a truck here? I know you called yesterday." Is that kind of what we're
Yeah,
thinking of?
we're already doing that. We're doing it with text. We're doing it with email. For carriers we're close with, we could do Teams and Slack webhooks. All that's there today. It totally exists.
Do we get different types of AI personalities? Are you working on like a trucker Jim or a Sally, the freight broker? Is that the next wave, the future?
We are rotating more voices, and we could give them different personalities. I don't know that we've thought about that. The voices in and of themselves have different personalities to a certain extent. What's been really interesting is getting multiple languages involved. When we have a driver pick up the phone and they say "Hola," we can have the voice switch over and start to speak Spanish, and that's really helped our driver services team with tracking check calls. A lot of the times what we found is our drivers that don't speak English, they've been hesitant to answer our phone calls. And so about a year ago, if they didn't answer our phone calls, we would text them. We'd find out if they prefer a different language, and then we could text them in that language. But now that we have that capability with voice AI, we're able to flip over and have a conversation in their language. And that's super awesome. Our drivers love it. My understanding is their accents aren't perfect, but they fully understand the conversations.
You've got to talk to the folks at Clone Ops. I interviewed them at Manifest. They said that the English one is the hardest one to make, but apparently their Latin American voice packs are like really, really good now. And I'm just like, you mean to tell me like languages now you can have the AI figure out which ones are better? Like, I think there's an opportunity here. You could A/B test it. You can have Sally the freight broker and Fred the truck driver, and you could do sentiment analysis and figure out which drivers may sell more to Sally versus Fred or Ed. They all need to have things that have the Ed sound as well for trucking. But that's kind of we're cooking up some new ideas. You gotta give me for the next TIA award. You gotta give me some credit for that one. But we got a little bit of time left. You're working through this. This is some really really cool tech in the workflow. What are some of the things on your radar now? Because I'm hearing generative. I'm hearing all of this. What's kind of the next steps, or what are some things that you're thinking about as we're going through the year?
For us, it's more about deployment and use cases. Where else can we deploy it? You mentioned Clone Ops. I know David Bell and what he's doing there. Very excited to watch them release their product. There's a lot of competitors in the space. And, if you go back to like 2017, right, when visibility became a thing, we bought into Fort Kites, Project 44, Macro Point. There's all these different products. We bought all of them. And I'm not going to say which one ended up being better than which for us, but one of them ended up taking away the space and being a master of it, right? And and some of the other ones, they ended up carving out more niches and being good at certain things. And there's a lot of competitors in the voice AI space. I don't believe it's going to be a race to the bottom, though. I think that. I would give all of them a try. I think that for us, for someone who manages a P&L, human capital, i.e., phone calls, is by far the greatest line item expense on my P&L. And a lot of our folks, we want them to do strategic thinking and sales and solving problems rather than being stuck on the phone all day on inefficient phone calls. And so I think I'm excited about all these products. I can't sit here and say there's one that's incredibly better than the other one, or
Yeah.
you have to use this one. I would try them all. And I think they're all eventually at some point, they're going to do different things and carve out their own niche. And so I think at some point we'll explore them all. And I think that, right now what we're doing is more like at an enterprise level. But
Yeah.
I think sometime later this year, we'll see more augmented AI agents where it's more or less my own co-pilot, where I could say, hey, go make this appointment, or hey, go do this for me. And so I'm really excited to see that space separate to where a human has their own true bot that they could say, hey, go do this for me, and it will go perform that function, send that email, make that phone call. I think that's what's next in the space. We're very close.
I, for one, welcome our robot overlords. When that way, they'll remember it this time. But Andrew, thanks much for your time. Folks want to learn more about Circle, get in touch, check it out. What's the best way?
Hit me up on LinkedIn. It's the best way to get a hold of me. Or I think my email's on our website, circledelivers.com.
Perfect. Andrew, thanks so much for your time as well. A lot of great stuff. We're going to catch up again soon.
Thanks for having me.
That's going to be a wrap for this episode. You're catching us live, though. We're on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. So if you're just joining us, it will be back. While you're at it, sign up for the Loaded and Rolling newsletter. It goes out on Thursdays. That's a wrap for this show, but I'll see you again soon.